Blended learning is where students are learning from computers for about 25% or more of their day. This is different than online courses. There was a school in Fresno, California that offered credits to their students if they wanted to take an online course. But only 23% of their students actually passed those courses. Then they said, well, what if we did an after-school lab where we had a teacher available for those online courses? And then 43% of the students were able to make up these courses. And this was for courses they needed to make up to receive graduation credit for. And so they said, well, let's take it a step further. For summer school, what if they came for a full day and had a teacher available to them to help them through these courses? And then 95% of the students were able to complete their course credit. So this face-to-face time is very important to blended learning. In 2011, I worked for Alpha, and we were on the founding team of this school. And we were interested in this blended learning model. So we decided, what's out there? What are people doing? So we first looked at the rotational model. And this is where, in one given classroom, you have some students working in a small group with a teacher. You have some students who are working with each other in a collaborative group. And you have some students working on the computer. And then they rotate through those stations throughout the day. Another more familiar setting might be the laboratory model, where at some point in a student's day, they're going into a lab setting and learning from computers. Rocket Ship Charter School in San Jose, California, actually went from this model, and they changed to an open classroom model. This is where you could have 60 students in a classroom with 3 teachers, and then they use the space as flexible space designed to enhance student learning. Another model that's gotten a lot of notoriety is the flipped classroom model, where students are expected to come to class having already watched videos, having already done some readings, and then they do the homework in the classroom. At Alpha, we decided to use a split model, where at any given point, some students would be on the computers and some students would be with the teacher. And what's really exciting about blended learning is that there's no one way to do it. Because it's so new, there's no best practice. No one knows how to do it best. So across the country, there are just different schools doing different things. It's also a good chance to talk about what blended learning is not. What you'll often hear is that we need computers in schools because kids need 21st century skills. And this is where I want to point out the difference between using technology and teaching technology. Kids do need 21st century skills. Employers want students who have PowerPoint experience, work with Excel, who know how to code an app, who know how to manage a website. These are very important skills, but that's not necessarily what blended learning is. Blended learning is about using the computers as a tool, from learning from the computers, not necessarily learning about computers. So that was an important distinction to make. I want to walk you through. Learning is definitely a work of heart, and certain pieces have to be in place for it to be effective. I'll give you an example. In 2009, I was working at a school that was just thinking about maybe doing this program. And so they decided, all right, so this new teacher, we're going to put him in a lab class for an hour a day with the kids doing a math program. And the expectation was at the time, oh, kids love computers. If they can spend 3 hours a day on Facebook, 1 hour doing math should be easy. And of course, that's not what happened. Kids were YouTubing gang fight and ripping off the keys to spell out YOLO. This is what kids were doing with that time. And this was thrown out after a year, an ineffective practice. And so, we really have to think about how we are going to make this program effective. The computer is just a tool. The same way we wouldn't hand a student a textbook and say, great, educate yourself. We can't expect to hand them a computer and say the same thing. At Alpha, we actually have this as part of a model. And so it can only be one piece of a model meant to improve education. It's just one piece of a very complex model. And teaching and learning will change. And so in order to use this tool, we have to change. And this can be really scary. When a school asks me, what would we need to do to be able to go blending? Or we're thinking about going blended, what would we need? And I usually say one of 4 questions, or all 4 questions. 1, are you flexible? Do you have the flexibility to midway through the year completely change what you're doing because it's not working? Are you flexible enough to let teachers be innovators and have them do different things than each other or than you planned, and let them experiment to find these best practices? 2, are you committed? You can't go halfway. You can't say, yeah, kids are going to learn on computers every day, but not be prepared to fix them immediately, or not have the bandwidth needed to have all the kids on the computer at the same time. In order to be fully committed to this model, you also need to train teachers to be proficient at using these programs and to commit to using the data in order to make the students' work valid and visible. The next question I have is about mindset. If you sit a student at a computer, how are you going to know that they want to engage with that program? This program is only as valuable as the student thinks it is. And so I'm going to paraphrase Carol Dweck. She said, what do we do if a student does a math problem and they do it perfectly and they do it quickly? Do we praise them? And she would have said no. What we say is, I'm sorry I wasted your time. That was obviously too easy. Let me find something that you can learn from. And that's the type of mindset that we need to be encouraging with our students. When they sit down at that computer, do they believe that the work they are doing will make a difference, will be valued? The last question I ask is about the role of the teacher. Some would say in this model that teachers matter less since computers are taking over some of the instruction. But I actually think teachers matter more in this model. They are now the orchestrators of these complex learning paths, picking which program should go for which student. They have to now target all the skills that the computer can't do. How to motivate that child, how to connect what they're doing to their home life, how to create a hands-on project that complements what they're doing online. All of these will mean that the teacher needs to be a critical thinker and an innovator, and we'll need to treat them as such. And so, you are learning a lot of lessons today. And so I hope that you are able to retain that you can't be distracted. When people are telling you that we need to have computers in classrooms because they're cost efficient, because we need 21st century skills, they're right, those things are true, but that's not why we engage in blended learning. And second, I hope that I've prompted you to get excited about blended learning and the potential that computers can have in classrooms. And lastly, I hope that you feel that you want to get involved. We need educators as well as software developers, website developers. There is so much need in the area of blended learning. Join, be a part of the solution. We need so many people to start really developing some of these programs. There are schools out there that still have phone trees because we don't know how to make it better. So help us. I also hope that we can reflect on the first question. If we have one teacher to one student, what is that potential? And if computers can help us get there to where we're really focused on individualizing education and optimizing their pace of learning, why aren't we there? And what can we all collectively do to make sure that that is a reality in the near future? Thank you.